I'm talking to Aisha Hinds. How are you doing?
Hey, Aunni, how are you? I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Well, great. I'm doing great. I watched the screener for Gun Hill, BET Premiere Cinema. So I was very excited. I loved the movie. I thought it was awesome. I thought you were really fierce as Arlene Carter, drug boss in Queens.
Yes.
I did. I was like, oh, she's bad. You played that role. I'm glad you're laughing because it's like, I was like, ooh, you were about to.
That's very similar to how I felt. I mean, when I got the script and I read it on the page, and even before brief, kind of synopsis about the character, and it was unlike anything that I had ever done, which was another level to his pitch to me. He's an incredible director, and I've been an uber fan of his forever, which is, so the irony that, he had been watching me and watching my career and seeing the stuff that I had done, and to craft a character that was deliberately different from anything that I had done with me in mind was so humbling, such an honor, and so I was very excited to do it. And yes, like you, I was like, oh, she's a baddie, and so I was excited to get into to peel back the layers of that. It was very, very exciting. Just the aesthetic of her raw mannerism, her attitude. She was definitely, a part of the canon of my career that I was itching to explore. So I'm glad that I got to do that through Arlene.
Wow. And Reggie's note to me via email was that he, like you said, he was a fan of yours. He hadn't worked with you before. Mm-hmm. And after seeing you in that role, he said, there was no one else who he thought could have played it better. So, congrats to you on that. At least that was his email to me,
Yeah.
And you bring a lot of experience to the table. You're from New York, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was dope too. Just, I was a fan of his work. I saw one of his first films called Dancing in September in New York at the Urban World Film Festival, and I was like, damn, I really love his point of view. I love his perspective as a writer and as a director, but I had followed his work but didn't follow his background, like where was he? So I didn't even know that he was from New York. So, any opportunity I get to shoot in New York is like kid in the candy store. So going back home, going back east was like a double your pleasure, double your fun for me. So we got to go back, we got to go back to New York. And, that in and of itself, I think that most projects that are shot in New York, New York is a character unto itself. And so just having that aesthetic on screen is something that really is beautiful visually for me. And it also is something that allows that part of, I guess, your sensibility, your attitude to come out in the work, So I felt like I could be a genuine New Yorker in this project now.
Okay, gotcha. And that you are. And I read your bio, and you were a tap dancer at the time when you were discovered to have also acting talent. Is that true?
Yes. The story is, my father was incredibly creative, incredibly creative, more so than I knew, even growing up. I took it for granted. I just saw him, he had made a record and he was very heavy music. So I was my father's child all day, and I needed creative outlets. And so one of the things that my parents found for me was this tap dance after school in Brooklyn. You either in the streets or you're doing something, and they wanted me to be doing something. So they enrolled me in tap dance classes after school at Jackie Robinson Junior High School. And so there I was, taking my tap classes, and we would go and perform at different places and stuff, South Street Seaport, and it was all wonderful and beautiful, but I was incredibly disruptive for some reason in talk rehearsals and stuff. It was my tap dance instructor, Vanetta Johnson, who so beautifully and lovingly, I owe her such a debt of gratitude. She pulled me into her office. Her office was the size of probably a utility closet, but we would all pile up in there, sitting on each other's laps. After rehearsal, you need an outlet, honey. You need an outlet that is far bigger than these shoes because you make too much disruption in it. And we laughed about it, but she was, she said, because I would always sort of, go a little bit extra. I was always doing something just a little bit more than the choreography. And so she guided me really in those formative years of my life and guided me towards a performing arts high school, which is LaGuardia High School in New York City. And at the time, I knew nothing about craft and monologues and auditions and preparation and nothing. I didn't have any structure to all of the creative energy that was flowing in me. And she guided me there. And that's where it began for me. So, yes, I still have a heart and a love for tap. And I think that every time that I see it or do it, I remember that those were really my first steps into what I do now.
Wow, that's amazing. You're actually talking to a dance artist yourself. Myself. Oh, yes.
That's
yes.
So you understand.
I do understand that need to perform and release that energy. Yes. I've studied dance all my life. And
I always wished that I were a better dancer because I was always like, there's so much that you can articulate and communicate without even having to say a word, just by using your instrument. So I know that you absolutely know that language.
Sure. And so we are now talking the day after the BET Awards and the BET Experience in LA. I actually clicked to follow you on Instagram and I believe also on Twitter, so I saw a couple of your pictures on the red carpet. You look great. You've been working out. What have you been doing?
This is true.
I could see the muscle tone. I was like, oh, she's banging. Like, what's been going on?
It's a combination of things. And the funny thing is, it started out less as like me going into like having an agenda to, get all ripped and get all toned and go work out. Like, I started falling in love with the people who like were training me or teaching me. So where I used to live in this area, I used to live in Studio City in LA, and in my building was a guy named Will Dominion. And anytime he saw me on the ground, he was like, yo, he would be like, he's from New York. He's from the Bronx. He would be like, yo, you should let me train you. And I would be like, sir, I mean, I think I'm fine. I don't even, is that a compliment? Is that like, but one day I took the offer. I was like, you know what? He was like, we could do a couple of sessions for free. And if you don't like it, so I started to train with him and he became a great friend and he understood me. Like just after a few sessions, he understood how my mind worked just in terms of health and the body and everything. And so he pushed me right out of my comfort zone and just created places for me, plateaus for me to hit and to transcend. He wanted to see me be my best self and push through. And it was at the time, it was such a parallel for my life because there was so much going on in life. I just wanted to push through my comfort zone and out of it and see what's on the other side. And so I started training with him, and then I would take spin classes with these sisters, two sisters who were had owned this studio called RPM Spin Studio, which was like around the corner, 2 minutes from the house. And so here I am spinning with them and the music and the conversation afterwards. So it became like church going there because it was just, and all of this then created this body that I'm like, oh, who's that? And then I incorporated Bikram. Thank you. I also do Bikram yoga because I'm, yeah.
I do. I love
workouts and exercises that that require discipline of the mind, because I think, what the mind speaks to the body. There's so much that we can do if we train our minds to, not limit us. And so that's why I'm an avid practicer of Bikram.
Love it, love it. And now you're talking about mind discipline. One question that comes to mind, actually I have two, but the one question, what would you tell your character, Arlene Carter, drug boss, as Aisha? What would you give her? What type of advice would you give her?
Honestly, I had quite a bit of respect for Arlene's character. Those types of characters, you kind of see these people as bad guys or bad girls or whatever, but I also believe every bad guy has a vulnerable side to them, or has a side to them that maybe they hide, or, they hide away. I think she believed with all her heart that she was doing the right thing, that she was doing what she needed to do to survive based on her circumstances, based on how she was raised, based on the responsibilities that she had assumed. She has a nephew, and so she felt like she had made a decision for her life that was employing the best of herself. When you start to see tangibly sort of the fruits of doing this thing that you're doing, you can't believe. But I guess what I would say to her is, maybe, how about trying another way? I understand that you think your way is working based on everything that you're seeing, based on all the fruits that you're seeing, based on, you believe that you have all of this power because people, subscribe to that and feed that into you, and you're believing your own press. But how about you try another way? How about you try, maybe something else, anything else? And if it doesn't work, guess what? This life is not going anywhere. This is something that will never go out of style, unfortunately.
But Arlene was a live or die type of girl. And she was willing to sacrifice her life for her craft,
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that type of woman, I just would assume that in the future, if this were to become a series, Arlene would find a way to live, but she could have very well ended up dead,
Right. Which I imagine that she had many close encounters, but somehow she's created a bubble around her. Ironically, one of the things that Reg gave to me to study was Cocaine Cowboy, that documentary. He told me to, just look at the life of Griselda Marco down in Blanco in Miami. And when I watched it, I was completely engrossed and fascinated with this woman, because I'm like, how in the world is she living so long? Like, exactly how you described Arlene was her to the 10th power. And I'm like, she's reckless. And you would think that some of her dealings were even a little bit killer, because even though she was ruthless and reckless in terms of, her behavior in the world of drug trafficking, she still had a heart. She was still a woman who wanted to love and wanted to be loved. And so she went in and out of relationships and, at points probably let her guard down, but she had to manufacture her world to be able to live in it. And it's like, at some point, you forget to turn a switch, which means that you are now left out in the open and somebody can come and get you. She just died recently, but I'm like, she escaped death for a very, very long time, especially in the drug world is so male dominated. Like, you would have thought that somebody would have been like, no, she's out of order, because she was flattening people, and the time that she came up in Miami, that world was saturated with drug lords, and she completely transcended all of them, and Jen found herself back home and still was like protected. And I'm like, wow, who is protecting her? it has to be beyond her. But the way that she lived, it looked like she was so exposed and vulnerable to the world. So, yes, if it goes to series, I imagine that Arlene has set some players in place who act as her wall so that she can move about freely and can be as reckless as she is. But at any moment, like you say, she is willing to live or die, and she will go out shooting.
Live or die. The beginning quote at the start of the screener, basically, Joseph, is that a man finds a way to live or he will die. He either lives in honor or he will die. And so I found that trait similar to both you and Tate's character, undercover character, Giant. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so Giant is like willing to go toe-to-toe with you, even if it brought his own death as an undercover cop. So I just want to ask you, in the time that you all are together on screen, what was it like to work with him battling two egos like that and, interacting with a great and iconic actor, Larenz Tate? What was that like for you?
That was amazing, because, like you say, which again is a tribute back to Reggie and the characters that he crafts. So many times when you're watching these crime dramas, every character is so structured. Like, this is the bad guy, these are the good guys, this is, the nemesis, and it's very clear how it's supposed to go and who's supposed to have the power and who's supposed to not have as much power. But to create two characters who literally, it's like a chess match. So being on set with him and shooting those scenes with two people who really are looking at each other like, I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you, at all costs. It was like going back to dance. It was like a dance. It was like a partnering dance, and so we had to keep eyes on each other. Because at any moment, you didn't know who had the lead. Are you the lead? Am I the lead? Who's leading this dance here? But at some point, there has to be a performance. So lights are going to go up. Who's going to take the bow? So it was that kind of. So it at one point it became funny because Larenz is obviously a jokester, and he's not going to be bowed out by no chick. but at the same time he understands, his character understands the kind of power that Arlene is and has, but he has to play it very, very, very strategically, or else, the whole thing could just go south. So it was, it was intense and fun all at the same time.
I just want to tell you my favorite line that you said, because I wrote it down. It was like, one man's demise is another.
Yeah.
And somebody should have told you about me. I'm going to sit at my desk in a bar and watch them clean your brains off my wall.
That was hands down probably one of my favorite lines. I was like, can we take it again? Can we take it again?
with the pistol, right? With the pistol.
Yes.
Like, oh, she's a bad B. She's a bad B, because I really thought you talking about who was going to win. I was like, oh, she's going to win this. She ain't going to make it through this movie.
That was so much fun. That right there. And where we screened it at Urban World last year. Afterwards, we had a Q&A, and then afterwards, quite a few people came up to me, and all they said was, somebody should have told you about me. So that became like the tagline for Arlene's character. Somebody should have told you about me.
And why not? And why not? Right. And I'm sure you were just as pissed when it was like, okay, why is the music off? And you were like, get up. Yes. Yes, I don't like feeling the defeat of women on screen, but you know how it is. You don't want to advocate violence, but at the same time, you're like, nah, I'm the winner here. I've got to win. So, yes, I fully expect that if this becomes a series, you guys will be able to battle it out and, continue to try to win territory. Not that I'm interested, don't want to advocate for drugs and crime bosses, but, hey. this is what we're talking about. So,
right.
But anyway, I have enjoyed talking to you. Is there anything else you want to tell mainstream America, any Black viewers out there, hype up BET, whatever you like to say?
I would just like to say somebody should have told you about me.
All right.